is you see down here, per Federal Highway Administrative, travel lanes should be designed as follows. At 25 miles per hour, 10 foot is the minimum. I think you could do with an 11-foot drive lane for where the cars go. And you could have a 6-foot bike lane, 11 foot for 11 foot for each direction of traffic, another 6-foot bike lane, and you could give 10 feet for the parking lot, for the parking on the right-hand side. That would help accommodate for large vehicles and doors that might open up into what's a bike lane. Simple, simple. The whole cost of doing this is maybe in the $50,000 range. You're talking about scratching paint off the road and restriping. There's no real structural changes that have to be done to make this happen. The next section of it, it gets a little different. From Lake Avenue, again, the veggie wagon, from that section all up along the lake, it's a little different. Now there's no parking on either side currently. There's no parking on the east or west right now. So it could just be a simple matter of restriping and inserting bike lanes on either side. What you could do here is a bike lane on the northbound side could run all the way up to Woody Hewitt. And so if you're on a bicycle trying to make your way to Hamlet Ave or something, you could take a bike lane all the way up and dip off of Lake Park Boulevard onto Woody Hewitt. Good to go. On the west side, the bike lane southbound could start right around where the sidewalk meets Lake Park Boulevard. Again, we're just talking about striping changes here. Be a great change, inexpensive, good improvement. I think it'd be a lot of bang for the buck.
Mike, can I ask a question?
Ask away.
I think in one of the early drawings I saw this, where the pathway around the lake comes out, it's a 90 that drops onto Lake Park, and I think you had showed me something months and months ago that where we did need to do a little bit of concrete work there, I think, to make that blend better. Is that still in the plan? You understand what I'm talking
Yes,
about?
yeah,
Where it's
absolutely.
Coming out to a right
Absolutely.
angle and then have to turn on the bike path.
I left that that slide out just to try and be a little quicker here with you. But indeed, right there, the concept would be, I mean, it's been walked so much that you can even see it in the aerial.
Yeah, it's
the
there
way
now.
it's
It's just
beaten
not.
down. So our concept would be, yes, that this would come down and curve right into the road. You break the curve, and so someone on a bike could come down here and just easily merge right onto the bike lane on Lake Park Boulevard and go south. Exactly. And where it goes in at a 90, that curve should also be broken. So somebody riding a bike north can turn in and get in there. I mean, right now, yeah, it's a vertical curve. It's a disaster.
Thank you.
Yeah, but that is part of it. But that, well, actually, I suspect that would have to be a part of the encroachment agreement with DOT. Am I correct when I say that? Because you'd be changing some curb work and stuff like that. Okay, thank you. But yes, and thanks for asking. So there it is right there. What we're requesting is send this up to DOT and let's make sure first and foremost, there might be something out there I don't know about that DOT would say we can't do this. I don't think so, because we have had informal talks with them. Leanne, you may recall, we stood out there in the road talking about this concept.
In the rain.
Yeah, in the rain. But we can't know for sure until we send it up and start pushing for it.
So just a question, Mike. Can you remind me how many businesses those parking places are in front of?
There's A&G Barbecue and what used to be Blue Water Realty. I think they changed their name, but the realty company there. And then there's a couple of bars, restaurants, Uncle Vinny's and...
That's going to be probably our biggest, I mean, well, A&G has parking, so, but, I mean, that would probably be our biggest people who may have an issue with it would be businesses that are utilizing those parking places.
I only know of one that's in front of businesses, the one in front of that realty.
And they have their own parking. The real estate company has their own parking on Greenville.
And
A&G
might I
has
just-
their own parking.
Parking in front of Uncle Benny's that I'm
Or might I disclose real quick, my real estate license are with Carolina Retreats Blue Water Realty, just so you know. So I can,
But all these businesses have parking.
I can chat with them. But that would be your biggest opposition in those changes, I would think.
Mhm.
just
Would
following
it be
on
any
that, there
businesses?
are none that are, on the east side, there are a couple spaces along there, I think, which are, however we do that, assigned to the homeowners who have no parking. I think there's a couple in there. There's none of that on the west side, right?
No.
Okay, so you don't have that issue. You don't have a homeowner who suddenly lost their parking place.
And there's still loads of parking up and down that east side. I think there's 20-some spots there. I don't know off the top of my head. So yeah, that's a thing. I'm not going to deny it. But I think overall, it's best for the community to lose those spots and open this up like this.
I think, just seeing, and I think DOT said they would allow us to do that, and we would certainly want to have a public hearing on it at some point before we do anything. I would think
But
that-
I guess my way of looking at something like this is find out if we can even do it. Like,
Right.
there's not any expense related to sending this to DOT and getting formal approval. So why not do that? Why have public hearings if there might be something out there that says we can't do it?
Right.
So
No, I
seems
just-
logical to me to
I
get it
agree.
to DOT, find out where they stand.
That's a good point.
One of the things that was identified on the pedestrian plan was this whole section of Lake Park as just kind of not a great place to walk. And, the plan's asking for, talking about sidewalks and multi-use paths, multi-use paths. But I'm not sure they're really even possible. There's not a lot of right-of-way out there.
Can you
There's
go back a
street
slide?
light- Sorry?
Can you go back a slide? I want to ask you a question. So this bottom figure, to be able to not have the bike lane in between the the parking and the drive aisle, how many more parking places would you have to take out? Is there too many? Follow me?
Say that again.
You see your bottom, you have the bike lane between the drive aisle and the
Uh-huh.
parking? How many parking places are you talking about there?
That's the east side where there's like about 20 spots.
So too many.
I would suggest,
And how long is that stretch? Do you know?
3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, and it's a little scary to me to put a biker between the parking and the drive aisle. But I know that's acceptable bike ped
It's been done.
scenario.
I mean, people are already riding their bikes up and down there anyway, so we're not changing that.
The difference is, though, Mike, the people who ride their bikes here now, I don't know if you guys had this experience, but there's these parking spaces, and there's always gaps between the parking
Right.
spaces. So people pull in between the gaps on their bike, they ride 35 feet, and then they come out, and it's quite dangerous right there because they jump out into traffic. And people walking do the same thing because there's no sidewalks on the west side.
And putting in sidewalks is darn near impossible. There's curb cuts, there's very little right-of-way, there's there's utility poles everywhere. I mean, I don't even know how you do that if you want to. I just don't really see it as a solution. This isn't the greatest solution. I'd love to have nice, wide, broad sidewalks alongside there. But it just doesn't, there's just no room for it.
And is that the only request you were going to present, or is there something else?
Now I have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Any other thoughts on this?
The only thing I'll say is that I walk down there a lot, and a lot of those spots on the east side, those 6 spots you're talking about, they're always empty. There's very seldom people park there.
You're right about that. I've noticed that as well. It don't even seem like they get used all that much.
Then let us see your other project, and then we'll chat about it.
Okay. So the next thing is, you're familiar with the Island Greenway system. I've yacked at you all about it a million times. Now that it's a thing, it's been created, it's established, it's becoming a reality. let's take the next step and start working on ways to improve it along the way, right? The whole point of it is to establish routes that are the best for bikes and pedestrians and encourage people to use them, right? Take these ways instead of Lake Park Boulevard, right? So this is the first step to me in improving these routes. So let's make these routes more advantageous to a bike and a pedestrian, right? So I'd like to see them have a little more primacy out there. Wherever possible, allow the bikes and the pedestrians to have the right of way over the cars. So this is the area back behind the lake. You know, you got the lake and you got the school and you got Mike Chapel Park, and we all know this area well. Some of you live back there. We're just asking to flip a couple stop signs and remove a couple to allow people a nice egress, all right? So bear with me. I'll tell a story about someone riding their bike to the elementary school from Wilmington Beach, okay? So there's Wilmington Beach over here behind Ed's head, all right? I would prefer to think that people coming from Wilmington Beach would take the Greenway in, right? And take the Greenway to Greenville to 4th Street and go to the elementary school. That is the safest route you could approach. You know, you don't necessarily, the Greenway is great, but you don't really want your kids driving across the Spartanburg intersection if you can help it, right? So, among a few other things, my battery seems to be dying here.
Use this cursor too.
I'd just like to see, so if you get off of the Greenway on Greenville, which is one of our bike and pedestrian routes, right? There's a stop sign at Greenville and 6th Street. We don't propose to touch on that. There's a lot of cars coming out of Carolina Sands that way. I've said this to Lynn. I'd have to move if people in the neighborhood found out I was responsible for a stop sign. So we don't mess with that. But Greenville and 5th is a 4-way stop. It's a very quiet spot. This little blue dot, that's my house. I know it well. There's no need for that to be a 4-way stop. Let Greenville just roll right on through. Let it, let kids on bikes going to school just come right through that spot, right? Now, what I'd like to see at Greenville and 4th, they should take that stop sign and move it up there and make that a 3-way stop. So that if you're riding to school and making this turn, oncoming traffic has to stop. It's just for safety, right? Then we get right here, this is 4th and Spartanburg. It's a 4-way stop. Great, okay? Spartanburg's a busy street and glad that Spartanburg has to stop. But why can't the kids on bikes roll right through on 4th Street on Spartanburg? Right? Why can't that be, it can be, open so that from here you could just ride straight down to the school without having to stop? Let the cars on Spartanburg stop for the bikes on 4th. Just a simple little change that'll just improve things. And the more you make this a great route to take for bikes, the more people on bikes will take it. And we'll keep them there. And the more people around town will know, watch out on Greenville, that's a bike route, right? Same story with this stop sign here. Think about the other direction. You're coming back this way, taking a right on Greenville to get down to the bike path, right? Doesn't it make sense for oncoming traffic coming down Greenville to have to stop there so bikes can just take a nice, safe right turn? It can't hurt. This one is a 4-way stop. There's 4-way stops all the way around the school. I would argue that that's not necessary, and 4th Street could. Thanks, Jerry. I know it's stretching. I'd argue that this intersection here, again, bikes and pedestrians could just roll through Atlanta. And then Clarendon, okay, Clarendon is a bike and pedestrian route. We've all talked about Clarendon. I don't have to explain that one to you. But 4-way stop, is that really necessary? I just think that it'd be better served to just allow bikes and pedestrians on Clarendon to roll right through. And 6th Street already has to stop anyway. I mean, it's not affecting anybody going down 6th Street. It's already a stop sign. We're just saying, let Clarendon roll through. And then last but not least, 8th Street, okay? You're coming down the Greenway, you're going down 8th Street, right? Maybe you're taking 8th Street all the way down to the state park that's down here, right? To me, 8th Street should have the right-of-way over Atlanta. That's the one spot. Flip that stop sign, like make Atlanta stop, and let the bikes and the pedestrians on 8th Street roll right through. And Jay, you mentioned the other day, you're on there a lot. 8th Street has really turned into a major throughway for bikes and pedestrians. And you go down there almost any time, especially any evening. It's silly with bikes and people walking up and down. That's a good thing. And we support that. But why not give them the right of way in Atlanta? Make the cars stop for them. That's all this is about. Just simple little changes.
So
Simple
Mike,
little changes to make that a happier area for
that's a great presentation. I think the stop sign project would be something, I call it a project because it's a hot topic anytime you move stop signs or anything like that. I would just defer that. I would think we would want to defer that to Bruce to take that through TRC and get input from
Has
the
TRC
powers
seen
that
this?
be.
TRC has seen this, but look, I'm a patient guy. We've been sitting on this for 5 months. I don't think I think it would be appropriate to do this again, to have Bruce, fire chief, police chief,
Right.
reassess this and make sure one last time. I got no issues there.
I think if we were looking for a council vote, we would have to have a thumbs up from staff and a public hearing, on that. Because I
And there
know
is-
we had this same issue down in Seagrove, and we've talked about it over in, what is it, Bowfin or somewhere over there. And it's a hot topic when you start moving stop signs.
I suppose. I know this area so well.
I don't
I've
disagree
lived here
with
for
you.
17 years.
I don't disagree with you.
And it's all so quiet in every direction. I just don't see these as significant alterations that would in any way turn one of these roads into some high-speed thoroughfare for cars. But that being said, great.
Right, and I know staff got bogged down with everything that's gone on, so that was probably not on the top of the list. But it's time to get back to some of those projects, for sure. Your thoughts, Bruce, or
Yeah,
gentlemen?
we can take it to TRC and come back with a recommendation to council on it.
So can we take from this that you support moving forward on these projects?
I-
Without a formal vote, would you say to staff, please move forward on these things?
I mean, I would ask staff to move forward. As far as a council vote or a thumbs up from us, I'd have to see council's recommendation and staff's recommendation. I do think we could go ahead and move forward with Project 1, run it up the flagpole with DOT
Absolutely.
to see if we can do it.
Those are yeses then, I
So,
take?
Mike, I think what you're looking for is not a vote, but just our feelings on it. And I think we've all seen that anything we can do to improve bike and pedestrian movement through town more safely, I think everyone on council is going to support that. I think the only thing, so thumbs up if that's what you're looking for me. That's not a vote, but I think what Leanne's saying is we don't know all the intricate details of
Right.
what moving those stop signs would be, so we need the staff to come back and say, we don't think this creates a safety hazard or whatever it might be. It sounds good to me.
Mhm.
Fully supportive of the concept of freeing up the bike traffic.
It was a
If that's what you're
very,
looking-
very thorough presentation, and I think we just have to go through the process, but I feel good about it.
And there's been a lot of things that sounded good to me too. And then when it came up at a meeting, there's 100 people standing outside. So just from sitting in this chair for
But-
7-8 years, I'm just saying we
Bruce,
want to do
you'll-
the right
you'll
channels.
Look at this, right, with a
Yeah.
TRC, and I don't know who the appropriate person is. Maybe it's Brian. Lake Park Bike Lanes idea, you'll proceed with sending this up to DOT?
I think that would be the easiest thing for us to move forward with. If we got DOT thumbs up, then we could take a council vote on that pretty easily.
I just feel like we've been kind of swirling around with, well, I don't know, and what does DOT think, and what does council think, and nobody wants to like step up to
Well,
the plate
council
and
can't
say,
vote till we
move.
know if we can do it. you know. So I don't have a problem with you getting that DOT thumbs up, and then we
Right.
could.
So
look
you're
at
looking
that.
for commitment, Mike, from Bruce, really, that his staff will run this to DOT, option one.
Right.
Is that what you're
Yep.
asking for?
We'll do that right away.
So there's your commitment on that. And then the second thing you're asking for is eventually to get before council to vote on these stop sign changes, but Bruce is committing to taking that to TRC for evaluation so that they can make a recommendation to us. Is that? So
That's
there's
it.
your steps. I think that's what
Mhm.
you're after. How do we get it moving?
That's why I'm here today.
Yep.
Will you do it for me, Bruce?
Yeah. We'll take care of it.
All right, so that's it. I'm done.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Great job, Mike, as always. Thank you. And you know, I will tell you guys, the Bike Ped Committee has done a lot of homework on this stuff. And these are all great ideas, but we sit in a different seat. You know, we have to, you know, go through the motions and through the process.
I understand. And it's been a weird 6 months. We all know this. So I've been trying not to pester you about it, Leanne, you know. I haven't
Right.
text messaged you that much because I understand other stuff going on. But this is good.
But I do think feedback for Bike Ped Committee, though, you guys have been relentlessly on these things for as long as I've been watching that group, and just thanks. Thanks for keep pushing and thinking about these items. I think it's really
Well,
good what you guys are
You
doing.
can thank me by nudging staff along.
Okay, Bruce, I need to thank us. Get this moving.
And maybe this is not the time or place, but I do want to shout out to my man, Dan Woodford, who's a fairly new employee. He's been very helpful to us.
Good, good.
He's a good dude.
Good. And these directional signs you see around town are the results of the Bike Ped Committee doing it on their own, which is a great initiative, I think. So,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll move into the update on the water study. Who's doing that? I actually am too, so hurry up.
You want to do 5?
5 minutes?
Can we take a 5-minute break? Okay, perfect.
5-minute recess.
I wish
That'll give you
everybody,
guys time to get all your paperwork out.
I wish everybody was passionate as Mike.
The,
Are we ready, Bruce? Okay. So now we'll have an update on the water study.
So, Mayor, Council, we've been working with LKC and Engineering Services for quite some time now, and really looking forward to getting this study in place so we can, it's all about water quantity and water quality needs for Carolina Beach as we progress towards build out. It's really worked well that this has kind of run hand in hand with our land use plan, because a lot of the information that our engineers needed is how are we looking to get to build out of Carolina Beach. And we tried this presentation at the beginning of COVID, and Zoom did not work well for us at that time. And we've learned a lot since then and made some tweaks, but we really wanted to have, and you wanted to have, our engineers here, so I'm hoping we can move forward. So we'll start, Adam is here and we'll start our presentation.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Ed. Thank you to your staff for all their help as we prepared this. And thank you to Engineering Services for allowing us to be a partner. We are going to cover some of the same topics we covered in May when we went over this last time. We have tweaked this a little bit, and we've tweaked the report, as I think you have in your hands, based on your feedback. I'm going to try and go through this at a normal pace. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. We can stop at any time. If you have trouble hearing me, I know the mask can make things challenging, so please don't hesitate to speak up and let me know. So we like to think strategically first, tactically second. So we always like to start off with why are we doing this, right? Why are we here? What's our problem? And what are we trying to solve? And then we kind of work towards a solution. So we really, you have two distinct challenges, and they are connected somewhat, but you have a volume challenge, a water quantity challenge. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where you are, where you've been, and where you're going from a water supply standpoint, and how we recommend planning for that. And we also are going to address, or the report addresses, a longer-term water quality challenge that we have seen, your staff has seen in your wells. Other communities up and down the coast have seen it also, and so incorporating infrastructure that will allow you to plan for those expected changes is part of this study also. So talking about quantity first, talking about volume first, we have a couple of data points here. What we are comparing is your actual peak day supplies versus your available 12-hour pumping rates. So the state of North Carolina wisely says that as you're evaluating the capacity of your system, if you're using groundwater, you have to evaluate that capacity based on a 12-hour pumping rate. So your 12-hour pumping rate is just under 2 MGD. And we included, waiting until August gave us the latitude to include your summer of 2020 data points through July. And 5 out of the last 8 years, you have at least one day, some years you have a couple of days where your system supply has exceeded your 12-hour pumping rate. Doing it once or twice is not a problem. This is not an emergency. This is not something that is urgent. However, as these numbers become more regular and you start stressing the aquifer more on a more regular basis, that's what we're trying to avoid. Just a couple of charts here as we look. This is summer of 19. Excuse me. This was previously, you can see, or we included this previously. So right around the weekend of July 4th, I think it was actually July 3rd, you can see where you exceeded it there. You had a couple of days mid-July, or sorry, a day mid-June and Labor Day of 2019 where you came close. We also included summer of 2020 through July. We don't have the August data yet from your staff, but you can see in mid-June you exceeded it and came close a couple of other times. So again, this is not an emergency problem, but what over time, as that blue line starts to creep up and you start exceeding the 12-hour pumping rate on a more regular basis, that's what we're trying to avoid. So transitioning from where are we now to where are you going in the future, at your instruction, after we discussed this in May and working with your staff, we backed up and decided it would be more prudent for the water supply projections to follow your land use plan and to mimic the projections and data presented in that plan. So the way we did that, at the bottom bullet here, your plan uses an estimated growth in peak day population of 1.36%. They had the authors of that plan have in there a data point from 2017 providing the peak population from that year, and we matched that up with the peak day supply of that year, and we're able to normalize this on a gallons per day per capita during your peak day events, and that's where the 123 gallons per day per person comes from. So as we track your peak population growth, mirroring your land use plan, we are applying 123 gallons per day per capita to that peak population. And in year 2050, looking out at our planning horizon, the math yields about 3.24 million gallons per day of peak day water supply necessary. So this gives us our aiming point, our target point, as we're planning for managing water quantity challenges going forward. This is just a graphical representation of what I just discussed. The blue line at the bottom is your peak population growth. It follows the axis on the left. So it's directly out of the land use plan. In year 2050, it estimates a peak day population of 26,434. And the red line, which follows the axis on the right, is the growth in peak day water supply needs based on 123 gallons per day per capita. So that's, and then you can see in year 2050, the 3.24. It's a little hard to see. The purple line also follows the axis on the right, just under 2 million gallons per day. That's your current 12-hour pumping rate, current capacity based on 12-hour pumping rates.
So let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
If the purple line is our current maximum water supply at just shy of 2 million, and we had one event in 2019 and one event in 20, why does the red line already start well above 2 million?
So it's a good question. What we looked at, we did not include the day-by-day data for 2017, which is what you see here. And this is what the growth is based off of. So if we took the 2017 peak day number, 2,102,000.
So you started on that red line at the max of 2017 at 2.1.
That is correct.
So can you go back to that slide with the
Yes, sir.
graphs?
So if we took 2.1 and we grew it by 1.36, it would be really close, should be right on actually where the 2020 data point ends up.
How many events do we need to have above our daily capacity, 12-hour pumping supply? How many events annually before it becomes critical?
Well, there's not a real direct answer to that question. When you are withdrawing water from the aquifer faster than it can recharge itself, that's when you accelerate water quality concerns. That's when you draw in high chloride and salt intrusion into the aquifer. So from a planning perspective, right, so sometimes plans are useless, but planning is important. From a planning perspective, you want to limit that to as few as possible. Most importantly, you want to limit to as few consecutive days as possible. Now, we're going to talk a little bit later about how you can manage consecutive peak days at the recommendation of one of your staff members. But I don't have a real good answer to say this is the number you want to avoid. Less than a handful throughout the summer would be a good advisable number, but there's not a hard line there. Yes, ma'am.
Just a comment before you go any further, and this could be a Mark question to think about, and you can tell me later. But have you looked at this June and July's numbers compared to last June and July's numbers? And I already know the answer is going to be it's exponentially much higher than we expected it to be. And does that make, is it COVID, or does that mean our growth rate is going to be faster than we think? And you can answer that later, but I know you already know where I'm going with that, because I see the gallons of usage at I'm a hotel owner at that property, and I keep wondering, are we drawing more tourism now than we thought we would? So the numbers are off the charts for June and July. I'm going to guess with you the same. So you can answer that when he's done.
Okay. So this is thinking about where are we now and where are we going. The method for projecting your 2050 peak day supply needs, we mirrored your land use plan and used a 2017 data point to establish a baseline and projected it from there. 3.24 million gallons per day became the aiming point of our study. So water quality challenges, we have tracked water quality data on your wells for the last few years, and I know Mark has more than that. This is a chronic issue. This is not an acute issue. This is something we would expect to be a continued challenge over the 5, 10, 15-year period or planning horizon. And again, this kind of comes back to the statement of anytime you are withdrawing water from the aquifer faster than its ability to recharge itself, and the second part of that equation can change year to year based on rainfall, based on other events, then you are inviting the aquifer to have intrusion from water that degrades the quality, from saltier water. So we would expect, I think everyone expects, we've seen it up and down North Carolina and South Carolina, your well water quality over a long planning horizon is going to continue to go down to the point where you would no longer want to directly introduce it into the distribution system. So the second phase of our plan, and as we looked at alternatives, we looked at transitioning your method of treatment over to membranes that would allow you to be prepared to battle or to solve water quality challenges, really however they come up. So lastly, from just a challenge standpoint, the why are we doing this, as our team began evaluation, kind of a blanket over the discussion was land availability in Carolina Beach, as you know, is precious. One typo here, as our staff point out, each well requires a 100-foot radius circle. So basically 1 acre square, and as we looked and searched, 1 acre square parcels in the main part of Carolina Beach, undeveloped, are almost hard or impossible to find. So, and also thinking about a 3 to 4 acre site for a new water treatment facility, we had the same challenge. So we talked about in the report, looking at Matsu property, looking at property close to the wastewater plant or in that region really became a good solution. So pause for a minute, because this is a good time. We've talked about quantity, quality, other challenges, why are we doing this? Any questions on that so far before we start talking about what are the possible solutions? Okay. So as we looked at alternatives, water quantity is a little more of a near-term solution. There's some, it's not an emergency, but there's more urgency to that right now. So we looked at working with staff and looking at day-by-day numbers. If we augmented your storage, then we can buffer peak days, back-to-back peak days. For example, Memorial Day weekend, July 2nd, 3rd, 4th, Labor Day weekend. If you have more storage where you can fill that storage and then empty that storage over time, it keeps you from having to pump consecutive 12-hour days on your wells. Adding a third filter at your current Alabama water plant is a very cost-effective solution. The building is already set up, the piping is already plumbed for it. It's a fairly, again, a cost per gallon solution. It's very cost effective. So those were the two near-term ways we looked at solving water quantity. From a water quality standpoint and thinking about a transition over to membranes, we looked at 3 different sites. We looked at the Dow Road site right up the road here and decided that site was not large enough for what we needed. We looked at your current Cape Fear water plant site over on Cape Fear Boulevard. That site does work. It's a little tight. There's some challenges associated with it. And we looked at siting a water plant on property off of Dow Road near where your wastewater treatment plant is. That ultimately became the site that we think makes the most sense, and we'll get into why in a few minutes. We also felt it was prudent to look at what would a connection to Cape Fear Public Utility look like. What would the capital cost be? Is that something that might be advantageous? And Brian can share more details on that, but to cut the long story short, it would be much more expensive to do so, and you then would have to pay for the water on top of that.
So just a quick question, is
Yes, ma'am.
801 Dow Road, the site we bought behind, okay, I see a head shake.
Yes.
So you're saying you don't think that is adequate for the membrane filtration?
Correct. It is not large enough to accommodate all the infrastructure pieces necessary for the planning horizon, or even the near-term plan.
So just the last two?
Yes, ma'am, just the last two.
So is this the property that backs up on the church? Church property?
So this property we bought here won't work, is what I hear them saying.
Right. So I know at one time we were looking into buying the church property, and that didn't work out. If that would happen, would it be large enough?
The answer is no. I'll be happy to, I think here at the end, I have a couple, here we go. So this is the 801 Dow Road site. You can see your water tank right there. This is the church parking lot. This site actually assumes that you owned that property. You can see how this item here bleeds over the property line. That's your property line now. I know all these pieces fit, but it does not work. There's no setbacks. You can see that you'd almost have to absorb that road. This building is too close to that sedimentation basin or the retention basin. So this is kind of all the necessary components at the right size jammed onto that site for the purpose of illustrating that it's simply not large enough.
Even if you own the rest of that.
In our opinion, even if you owned this piece, which would be purchased from the church.
I'm
Now-
just confused on that, and I know it's not,
Yes, sir.
I know it's not you, but Bruce, you need to get up to speed on this with Ed and Mark at some point, because we specifically went through a number of presentations from staff that said we could get a water treatment facility on this site. There was always a question whether or not we could add another building. Add another tank. But there was room for everything we needed with the existing tanks. And now you're showing 2 million-gallon tanks on this site. You're showing components that were never expressed to us before.
Mhm.
So my concern with staff is if we're adding stuff now that we should have added before, we bought another pig in a poke and we spent $500,000 on a piece of property out our back door that's now being used for miscellaneous stuff that we don't need. And government, again, owns buildings that we don't need to own, and it just, you're gonna hit a real raw nerve on that. But what you're telling us is your report says that land's not big enough.
Yes, sir.
That's what you're saying.
No, not your fault. I'm glad
No,
you're saying it, because that's exactly what I just heard.
I'm
And
just telling you right now, that's the site we have. Okay,
Understood.
so at some point, you can look all over town.
Mhm.
You know, we're not paying $2 million for this site next door. We're not paying $5 million for Harris Teeter site or the Putt Putt site. There isn't room out here. We have been through this so many times. We spent so much money and went through this to buy that building
right.
based on our utility director telling us that that would work.
That's
Yes,
right.
we needed the 10,000 square feet from the church, but we don't have to have it. Ed, I'm just telling you, you should have known this slide was going to set me off. I just,
Well, I'm glad you woke up down there, because when I agree with you 100%. Steve and I were on council in the last council when we went through this over and over. And it's not, I'm glad you're telling us this, because it's news to me, and I think it's news to Steve, you know, when we spent $500,000 on the property. And so just since we're here,
Yes.
I had a conversation with Mark, and that membrane filtration system, reverse osmosis, whatever, the number I heard was $26 million. Is that what that cost?
That's the phase 1A and phase 2. The piece
So
just
about
the
that.
membranes is only about 14.
So, I mean,
About
that's
14.
also, I mean, do we even need to be thinking about that? You know, anyway, just throwing that out.
So I think if you wanted to, sorry,
don't think they were looking as far ahead as we are in a timeline.
Mark,
And
we're
it's
not
an
gonna have that
addition-
conversation here because he
Okay.
was. He was. And you were here, we were talking about it. We were talking about a 30-year build-out. We were talking about building out the town. We were talking about capacity. We talked about the 2 million gallons per day and the number of days.
No, I got it.
So we did talk about it.
That's okay, we can still sell it. Go ahead.
So these were the alternatives we looked at, and I was finishing. We did look at a connection at Cape Fear, how far you would have to penetrate into their system to get the volume you need, and from a cost standpoint, it's simply way more expensive than the.
So you think
numbers
it's
we're
the
talking.
Matsu property, if we were ever going to do it, which means
We-
we'd have to get permission to do it.
We believe that's the best site, yes, ma'am. And I can show you, the Cape Fear water plant site, it does work. It's a little more expensive just because of the logistics of construction on that site. I think personally, I think there's value in allowing you to repurpose that site if you wanted to. I'm new here, so that's just my personal opinion, and you may disagree. We believe the water plant fits best on Matsu. There's also
We
the.
do too, but that was not an option. We haven't been able to get a water tower over there. We haven't been able to get a storage site over there.
We have to have their permission for
I
it.
understand. I'm aware. Yes, ma'am.
But you're doing a great job taking our frustration here, so, but it's not on
It's
you.
your fault.
Hey,
It's your
you're doing a great job. It's not you.
Well, to close out some discussion on the Dow Road site, if your target capacity for membrane treatment was maybe half of your full system needs, that site would work. If we want, what that would mean is that it would open you up to likely one day in the planning horizon needing to go somewhere else to build another membrane plant as you needed to shift all of your water supply over to membrane treatment.
So what you're saying is, if that building on the Dow Road site, if we eliminated that building, would there be enough room?
Yeah, I can tell you the building from a water treatment standpoint, and we've looked at the building a little bit, we don't believe the building itself has a whole lot of value. I don't think the eave height is tall enough. But we could explore that further.
You don't want to hear my comment, because we were told it would fit.
Behave.
Okay. Any other questions? Sorry.
No, I appreciate you shooting straight. I mean, that's an answer we've been looking for a long time. Keep going.
So we split this up into phases, and so what we worked with engineering services and with staff and with your staff, how do we solve the long planning horizon challenges? We split this into 2 phases, and the first phase is more geared towards water quantity. It does have a water quality component, but it's more geared towards helping you reduce the number of days that you have to pump your wells more than 12 hours a day. So installing a third filter at your Alabama plant is a very cost-effective solution to get another $500,000 a day of treatment. Constructing additional storage gives you the ability to fill that storage and buffer peak days as they come over the next 5 years. Now, beyond that, additional storage is not going to help you, but in the near term, additional storage will certainly help you. So this phase 1 approach, it's 7.7 million. At the bottom there, we kind of give you the check boxes of what it accomplishes, and maybe most importantly, as we put these phases together, Mayor, there's no wasted infrastructure. So everything we would build in phase 1 would be used as part of phase 2. And then phase 2, which again, it's much more, the motivation for the phase is more geared towards a water quality and getting you ready for long-term water quality challenges in your existing wells. So transitioning you over to membrane treatments, the cost you're seeing here would be if that facility was on Matsu property. We do have some other costs. I'd have to pull it out of the report, or in the report we showed a cost if you wanted to put that on Cape Fear, what that number would be. We would aim or size the facility for 3.5 MGD. Remember, our 2050 goal was 3.24. You always want that supply line to be ahead of your growth line, so that was kind of where that number came from. And again, we would use all of the infrastructure built in phase 1 as part of phase 2. Now, one of the values of phase 2 is, yes, it's a very large price point. However, it prepares you to transition all of your wells and then even add wells in the future at very low price points. So phase 2 would build the building, all the electrical infrastructure, all your storage infrastructure, your pumping infrastructure, as you needed to bring your existing wells over to the new facility, or as you needed to, as you needed to drill new wells. It's a relatively low cost of adding a new skid and making that happen. So it really sets you up for the 30-year horizon and beyond. So just for a budget summary here, a little over 22 million total. From a phasing standpoint, sometimes it helps to see them both together. Another part of the piece, and here kind of wrapping up, not only do we feel it's important to tell you what is the challenge, what are the ways you can solve it, and then when do you need to do this by, all right? So what's the time component to this? Because these are large numbers, and we respect that this is a process, not an event, right? This is something that needs to be planned for. So just from a timing, how long does it take to get this done? Phase 1 takes about 3 years to get done. Phase 2, from start to finish, is more like 4 to 5 years. It has an environmental permitting piece at the front that we're kind of ignoring, but really about 4 years to get design, construction permits, and construction complete.
So if
Yes,
I
sir.
understand your phase 2, that would get us to the capacity to handle 3.2 million or 3.5?
Yes, sir.
So that was built out for a 2050,
Correct.
but you're saying do this 23 years early.
Well, it prepares you for that. And let me let me answer the question of why are we saying do this by then, because that's an important one. So these dates, there's logic behind here. We are not, we understand that a $14 million price tag is not easy to swallow, so there needs to be some,
Well, it's not 14, it's 21.
or excuse me, $22 million price tag is not easy to swallow, so understanding why is there, or what's driving the schedule here. So as I mentioned, Mayor, you always want your supply line to be above your growth line. So this is the same version of the previous plot we showed. Your purple line is your current capacity. The green line would be your capacity after phase 1. And then the red line, I think it's red at the top, would be your capacity after phase 2. So the when does this need to be done by really hinges on when does your growth curve cross the capacity that you would gain from phase 2.
Lynn and Jay, just to help you understand why I'm asking these questions. We floated a $30 million bond for utilities. We have raised utility rates 5%, 5%, 10%, 10%, 10%, 5%, and we're still coming up where we have to raise utility rates. We got a little skittish this past year when we raised the rates 5 because we needed to go 10, just to make our bond warrants and make our payments. So if you think that the town can, and that got us through 2020, 2021's budget, right? In the next 7 years, do you feel like raising the rate another 7% every year? Because to get this done by 2027 and spend $22 million, you're talking about floating another bond
We just did again, basically.
every year for the next 7 or 8 years.
I don't think we can do that. I'm going to tell you from a business standpoint, a person who has a huge water bill, not just an individual resident, but a huge water bill for these businesses cannot keep doing that.
Well, we had pushback, strong pushback, and the reason we've got a couple of new council people up here is because utility rates raised so much, and everyone said we need to figure out something different. So if you think that there's the
When's that bond
public
paid out?
stomach out there to increase the rates 5 to 10% a year, because that's what Bruce will have to show up and say. And I mean, I'm not counting the proposal.
No, I respect
I'm
where you're
just
coming
saying,
from. It's not
you
easy.
deal with reality here on how you're going to fund it.
When does, let me ask a question, when is this bond paid out?
It was a 30-year bond. We've got,
Not in our lifetime.
not, I hope I'm here, but.
I mean,
I'm here.
this July 1 was the last increase at 5%. And I almost called Mark and said, holy smokes, I just got my bill in, and it's through. Then I realized it was July 1.
I'm guessing that we're going to still see another increase anyway, because Debbie's going to come back and say, we're not covering our agreement on our bond. We have to have like a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2.5 income versus debt cost. And we drew down, so I mean, it's just, it's one of these you got to look at. I'm not saying we don't need to do this, I'm just wondering why we need to do it in 7 years.
So I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is a real simple question from somebody who doesn't know what you know. Why does doing this increase the water quantity? You're saying that doing this project gives us more water?
Both phases have a quantity component to them. Phase 1 would increase your quantity or your available supply by 500,000 a day.
Because it's more efficient, or?
No, we would add a filter at your Alabama site, which increases the capacity of that facility. Also included in the cost is a new well that would serve that site to increase your supply. Yes, ma'am.
And on phase one, does it get us more storage?
It does. Yes, sir.
Okay, so one of the things you mentioned earlier was one of our goals should be able to create storage that would allow us to have less frequent
Yes,
12-day maxes in a row.
correct.
So if we've seen for the last couple of years, we have 1, maybe 2 days where we're exceeding our 12-hour pumping supply.
Correct.
If we just did the 7 million, does that buy us enough time to where we can store enough water that we're down to just having 1 or 2 days a year, or even 3? And that was my question, how many days is critical? Because we're just not financially capable of spending $30 million. I'm not even sure we could swing the 7.
Steve, on the back of your question, I'll be surprised if Mark doesn't tell us it's been more than a couple of days this time. I mean, I don't know what he's going to say, but I can tell you it has been crazy for June and July. I would be surprised if we're not having more critical days than we thought we were going to have. Say again?
Well,
Right, but is that, have
The
you,
graph shows 1 day.
That it goes over.
right, but have you looked
Yeah.
at June and July and August of this year?
He hasn't looked at August, but June and
Yeah,
July are on there.
yeah.
Are they on here?
So we have the data
You
through
had 1
July.
day. You had July, it was the July 4th weekend.
So you can, and this is what Mr. Shuttleworth.
Well, I
was
can't
saying.
imagine that if we've only had 1 day this July,
That's 2019.
that we didn't have, we should have had none then last July.
You got none in July.
Are you tracking what I'm
1 day.
saying?
Yeah, but look at your chart right there. That's
I
this
know
year.
what the chart says. I'm
That's
telling you
this
what I
year.
know.
Okay, well, he's telling you this is the actuals. Compared to what you know, these are the actuals. We had a day in June, or end of
This year,
May. This
1
year,
day.
1 day. What you're
I'm not
seeing-
saying it's not right.
Well,
I'm
what you're
just saying
is
when you
your
do
personal activity has been a lot higher than in the past.
30% higher. That's what and I can't imagine that's not the same throughout town. Does that make sense?
Yes, but according to this actual daily supply that comes.
Well, then
out
I would
every
think
day,
last year and the year before would be nothing then, if we only had 1 day this July.
It just, so I tell you what we're not seeing is some of the same, I mean, what are the 2 big hotels occupancy? Have they maxed out at 75? They're not running. 100%.
Marriott and Hampton, I don't know. I could find out.
I mean, I think they all capped out at, I mean, they put that self-imposed, you're the beneficiary of that.
Yes, but you're right. They did some self-imposed 50% and things like that. And
Understand
yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
I
but
see what
empiric-
I see what you're. I'm
empirically,
tracking what you're saying.
Empirically, you're seeing it.
But I can tell you those short-term rentals didn't do it.
Well, this is the
SCRs.
actual data. So my concern is if we're spending $7 million to cover 4 days, that might be a better solution on a short-term basis. Bruce,
Right.
you see where I'm headed? I mean, I just,
So here's my take. So, infrastructure, we use this as an example. We spent $25 to $30 million on infrastructure because previous councils, quite frankly, just kept on kicking
right.
kick the can down the road, right? They didn't fix it for years and years. I'm talking about 30, 40 years. They didn't fix it. You guys spent the money on the infrastructure piece. The reason I bring this up is we have to take a look at this piece the exact same way. Council at some time needs to take a look at the future of Carolina Beach on the quality and quantity and make some tough decisions. The question is, the $7 million, where does it come from? You know, do we have to raise utility rates? Can we find the money someplace? You know, we've got, that's what we need to try to do, is to find the money someplace else instead of raising utility rates.
Where?
Right. I mean, generally, government gets their money from a couple of places, property tax or utilities, parking rates.
Well, like I said, we need to take a look at it.
Well, Steve's right. I mean, that's where the money's got to come from. One of the issues we have here, no one wants to talk about it, is our property tax rates are
That's a good
low.
point.
I mean, they're, in comparison to a lot of places.
That's a
And
good
at
point.
some point, I mean, I'm not sure what the right answer here is in terms of investment, but at some point you have to make that investment. And whether you get it through increasing water rates or increasing property taxes, that's where it's gonna have to come from. I just don't know I'm struggling with, and I think Steve's helping illuminate, is exactly when, because, you know, obviously we want to have this built out 2 days before we need it, right? I mean, that's the right thing to do. The problem is you just don't quite know as we grow and we get people coming in, so.
Right, and
So that's a good question. What is our water quality now?
well, to add to his point, and yours also, the town has an aging system. You've been using these groundwater wells, some of them are 70 years old. If you lose 1 or 2 of those wells for whatever reason, then your pumping rates for the others increase, and you're gonna see 12-hour plus rates. So in our document, we're trying to let you know that water quantity is a future issue for you to plan for. We already know about the water quality, but the water quantity is a future issue. When exactly that's going to happen, we can't predict that. But what we can say is that your existing aquifer system, the more you pump, whether you're 12 hours, on your well system multiple times in a year, but a trending line is that blue line each year is going up. Even though you're underneath your capacity to deliver, that blue line, you're pumping a little bit more. Your average every year is going up a little bit more. It's taxing your aquifer source a little bit more, which when it does that, as Adam mentioned, the recharge rate versus how much you're pumping out, it doesn't balance.
Right.
So you get a saltier water intrusion. That's the risk.
And
And-
that makes sense to me,
and
what you
that
just said.
affects-
The more water you use, the more salt you get. I
That-
got you.
and
And our
that affects-
citizens would say, you're built out, stop letting people build. That's what our citizens would say.
Right. So what we're doing and you've asked us to do is to provide you with a document that gives you a plan moving forward. So when you enact that plan, obviously that's your decision, and when you can do that, that's your decision. It's something to be discussed.
So what was the option that I saw on your slide that said buy water from somebody else?
That was if you went to Cape Fear Public Utility.
You mean buy more water from them? But we're not set up to get water
You're
from them.
currently, no, you're not, and they're not set up to provide that.
Right, right.
So and that's where the expense of doing that is at a much higher cost than what we have proposed here.
I think Southport just went through that last year, a couple years ago.
Well, they're dealing with wastewater. They are buying their water from Brunswick County, but they're also,
It's
I mean, what does
extremely
something like that
extremely
cost?
expensive.
I'm sorry.
What does something like that cost to just set up the ability to be able to do that?
Well, I mean, I think their issue is getting their pipes here would be
Right.
the cost of that.
And then they charge us for the water.
Right.
Right, but it's better not having any water.
So what, in my discussions with them, they said they don't have the supply to
To-
provide you.
They couldn't even do it, is what you're
So
saying.
that they would have to increase their supply and then build the infrastructure.
And they're gonna pass that
to-
to us.
And then it's gonna pass through, yeah. And then you become a customer and you know how that works, so.
I want to come back to something that I didn't view this chart until you just said it. I was focused on peak days. But I think what you said is if you smooth that line,
I don't think
there's a clear angle, there's
I'm
a
not saying
clear
no, I'm
upward
just saying we
trend.
need to
Hang
go
on.
to the
What I'm saying is that over the years, this blue line is inching north, it's going up. And that further taxes your aquifer source. So that year that you may need to do membrane filtration comes sooner. Now, we can't tell you when that'll be. I mean,
And the measurement of that, or the best that we, just make sure, test my knowledge here. So the best estimate that we have comes from water quality analysis, right? We don't know how much water is in the aquifer and how much we can take, right? We don't know exactly where, it's not an exact science. But what we do know is if we measure the water quality, which we do, right? And as we start to tax the edges of that capability, you will see water quality go down. Is that?
Yeah.
So that's the best measure we have of how the aquifer's doing, is the quality of water coming out of it.
Right, and I agree with Mr. Shuttleworth is that, the bang for your buck. Why are we doing it now? Why, and kind of when is the question, and what can we do now to See, right now, you're using groundwater wells, that's the cheapest water you can produce. You've been doing it for a long time. But as that water quality goes down, your need for additional treatment, which is going to increase the cost of the water, goes up. If we can maybe push that off to a later date by increasing storage capacity so that we're storing water and using it kind of peak shaving over time, and then a gradual transition, which is what our plan has, is a gradual transition from the groundwater wells to a membrane filtration over time. So as your water quantity needs increase, which if that's 2030, 2040, then you can increase your amount of the membrane
I
filtration.
think the plan's solid.
No, I
think
agree.
the plan's solid. The question for council and the community is gonna be, how do you pay for it, and when do you pay for it, and when does the pinch point get you to where you have no choice? Just like our sewer treatment, when you get to a certain point, you have to act. So I applaud you for giving us the front end. Now,
Absolutely.
we have the tough work of figuring out.
And do I hear you saying our number one first step should be get a water storage facility? And then that's one of the things we've been talking about for a couple of years now, is we need a water tank.
I think Mr. Barbie's comment about you want to have this done about 4 days before you need it, and the challenge as council members, and I don't envy you, I empathize with where you're coming from, is your consultants are telling you it takes about 3 years to get it done, right? So that kind of creates a difficult challenge. You can see as this line, you have about 10 spikes that are close, 8 spikes that are close. If this line as an average was about 10% higher, then all of those lines would be over your supply. And so this is where having additional storage helps you to fill that storage in advance of peak events, in advance of weekends and holiday weekends, and then drain that storage over time so you're not having to pump out of your well.
Well, then the other issue that we have to talk about, the elephant in the room, is this is May through September. So we're creating capacity, huge capacity at huge cost to our residents, which is why we put it back on utilities and not property tax, because it's a user fee. Because we get all this volume in the summertime. Our volume in the winter goes way down. And so we're going to have all this extra capacity in the winter. And we're paying a boatload of money for it in the summer. So sometimes we want to get to that paradigm shift that said we're full. I'm just throwing that out there. We're full. I could guarantee you that's why other communities have said we're full. We just can't afford any more.
Our citizens would say that.
We did that at Freeman Park when we lost part of the beach, right? We said, I'm sorry, there's only room for X. I'm just saying at some point, I mean, it's tough because businesses want to keep expanding and they want to keep, I get that. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying at some point, we're talking about another $22 million to service 10 events, 15 events during the summer season. Do we put an occupancy rate out that said we're full? Put this flash sign that said, I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm just.
Steve, I'd just like to follow up on one thing you said about I do think following we're talking about it's got to come from property taxes or from utility rates. I do think utility rates is the right place to do it, because exactly what you said is the people who, in the tourist community, citizen, if I'm just a citizen living in the middle of town, why do I have to spend all this money to fill, I guess Leanne, but fill the hotels and to fill, but it's, so making it as much per use as you can is good. I just don't know that the citizens can tolerate much more, and as Leanne's saying, the businesses can tolerate much more. So at some point, something has to give. You either got to get more money, you got to get fewer people. I think you pointed out what the collision is, right? That's where the collision is.
Well, and I think you brought up the topic of the only source I can see to pay for is property tax.
So I was just giving Jay a couple of numbers there. If you run an AM schedule at 30 years on $7 million, it's about $310 a year at 2%. We could do better, we could do worse, but 2% is 310. That's one point on the property tax. Pretty darn close. If you do the full tilt, you're at almost $1 million, $970 a year. It's going to put you 3.5 cents on the property tax. That's just a question for the community, a question for council, and the will.
It's a good question. What do y'all want?
Right. So I just, those are the things we just got to put in the stew.
I think they could stomach the 1 point, to increase the capacity, you know.
You know, plus right now, if you take a look at our property tax, we're at .022, which, if you take a look at our neighbors, we're very, very cheap compared to everybody else.
Well, actually, we're twice what Wrightsville is. So
They have more
our neighbors
property.
to the south, I agree, Jake, they're substantially higher. It just depends on your tax base. We have some commercial tax base. The other thing is, I guess I'd have to know when the next revaluation is coming. Because as you were discussing earlier, everyone was discussing the value of real estate properties. That's when you're gonna get the pleasure of deciding whether you're gonna be revenue neutral or you're gonna leave the rate the same and take a windfall. Because we're gonna have a rate, we're gonna have a valuation increase. So while the rate compared to the guys to the south is half, it's also half what it is in Wrightsville. So it just depends on your property value. So I'd be interested to hear from Bruce to see what our 10 years tax value is, right? Because that's really what establishes where your rate's going to be, right? I mean, if we go up, Jay, if our property value goes up 15% on this next valuation, theoretically, to remain revenue neutral, we'd have to reduce our taxes by 15%. Because that's revenue neutral.
Right, but if you
If you go to the public
Right,
and say,
right.
we're gonna leave it the same, they're gonna say, well, you just increased your revenue by 15%. That's what the public is gonna come forth and tell us. So we just have to look at those. I don't disagree that our rate's half of what, Cary Beach is.
I think the hard job we have, right, is the hard job of council is getting people to understand the need that's gonna be here and how we decide to pay for it, because yes, they will light up social media about taxes and the town wasting all their money. I mean, that's the standard operating procedure in government these days, right? Let us run out of water,
Right.
and suddenly,
But we're not running out of water
No,
for
no,
the
I understand.
residents that live here.
Well,
That's
no.
gonna be the fight.
when I say run out, I misspoke really. I was thinking of water quality. Allow the water quality to get to the point to where it's unusable.
Well, your citizens will say it's there now, but I hear you guys and staff saying it's tested every month and it's within the state standards of where it should be. Is that correct?
From the data I've seen, yes, ma'am, it is.
I mean, so,
Let's see where, yeah, a lot of that, my personal opinion, having been here a long, long time, the water quality is the best it's ever been on this island. I can tell you stories, we can talk for hours about how bad the water used to be. A lot of that is where people come from,
right.
right? You come from places, if you come from an area that's, has pristine water quality naturally, that's what you're used to. So they come here, I remember my whole life, we always called it beach water. People say, yeah, I don't drink beach water. And that was any beach in the world, it wasn't just this one. So some of that's just cultural.
There's a fun anecdote, I'm sure Brian can tell you this, there's always a disconnect between quality and taste. And folks tend to think a lot of times lower quality actually tastes better when it may not be higher quality. It's just kind of the world we live in. But so coming back to the question of, do we really need to do this by 2027? Is there a way to push it off? Implementing phase one and augmenting your storage does move this, it gives you the ability to battle this intersection and push it into the future. If you implemented phase one, it does buy you a little time to where you could monitor some of this and consider some of the challenges and how well storage allows you to buffer consecutive peaks. I think that I don't know if it would push it significantly in the future, but it will buy you time so that you can buffer, and I don't want to go all the way back, but when those spikes start to get close to your 12-hour days, you can use your storage to not have to pump your well so much.
How much was phase one? I forgot.
7.7.
And what's the usable, I know there's no exact answer, but what's the usable life of stored water, right? It can't be stored for long periods of time, right? It has to keep moving, that's my understanding.
Yeah,
So
yes, sir.
it's just creating basically a very short-term buffer, right? How long can it live in that tower is really my question.
Well, there's an operational component to this, and we've discussed it briefly with Mark. We've talked about it. It's one that is manageable, but it does, you would not, excuse me, you would not want that water to sit there for weeks and weeks. Additional storage would be filled, in preparation for expected peak events. After the event is gone, you would lower it some.
Is it 2 days or 2 weeks to store water? What's the optimum? No more than 2 weeks, no more than 30 days?
I wouldn't want to store it more than about a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
If
was the
that,
question.
yeah.
Okay.
But it,
I mean, can you
Again,
rotate
yeah.
tanks and all that kind of stuff, or
I'm
not?
sorry?
Do you rotate tanks where you're pulling from, or?
well, and we're getting into the weeds a little bit on our side, but there's a theoretical detention time based on how much you're using. So just because the tank stays full for a few days, the water's turning over, right? Yeah, so all that creates some operational components that, that your staff.
Does your plan take into account replacement of the existing tank on Cape Fear or the loss of that tank?
It does factor in the loss of that tank, yes.
As you know, we've been fighting with Matsu, and we've been struggling for 3 years now on getting a replacement tank that at one point was approved for 3 million gallons on the Matsu property. I mean, that we had plans ready to go. And we were out to bid. We had a site.
Right.
That was a 3 million gallon capacity that would allow for additional storage and taking Cape Fear offline.
What
That
happened?
was in our bond.
What happened, Steve?
They didn't like us. Ed screwed up.
Blame Ed, okay.
I mean, where are we at with that? Have we heard anything else? Well, maybe we should just be asking for one thing.
They said no. They keep saying no.
We have continued to work with Matsu, and they evaluate our formal request, that they are more open to the ideas that we put forward, especially with the water storage proposal that we had. We were looking at moving the old facilities at wastewater treatment plant, moving everything closer to Dow Road or everything further away from the blast zone. So there were a lot of positives for them in that plan. I think everything just got put on hold with approvals, and their approval process got continued to change. So
They said we had to clear that environmental report first. They came back and put up a new hurdle.
Yeah.
Right? And then now we're doing the environmental testing, and we have to do the mitigation plan, which they said would take 4 quarters of testing. I don't know where we're at in the last one. What happened originally a number of years ago in the 70s, I think, or maybe the 80s, is town leadership, county leadership, Curie Beach leadership got with federal leadership and went to the Army and said, put a wastewater treatment. That was a federally sponsored program over there. At some point, it's just going to be a political issue to get things done on Matsu, and we just haven't had the ability to do that. We haven't had the political chips. We haven't pushed the right button. But whether it's an increase to our wastewater treatment plant or the water, there's really no. They want unmanned facilities there. There's nothing more unmanned than a water storage tank that is remotely operated. Mark's got all those, and the same thing with the wastewater treatment. We just haven't gotten the political.
Well, maybe
We haven't got it done.
this is a time to take the study and present that and make our case with this study in hand now. You know, I don't think we've had any information like this before to go to them with and tell them how urgent it was, other than we think we need this. You know.
Additional follow-up on. So my short-term home council, it seems like Matsu is pulling away, but that just could be because I'm looking through a very narrow lens. But what I heard you say, Steve, is you still think they're open to unmanned facilities over there, or do we really sense? Is my sense correct that they are? What we saw with the dredge spoils and stuff is they are basically saying no more.
I think after 9/11, the Army came back with some new plans and policies, and so they've had to go more through Savannah. And since then, we've had a rotation of a number of officers. At one point, we had a favorable colonel that helped us figure out how to get the island Greenway done, and our push was to get that versus maybe some other stuff. We were in the middle of the dredge. We had that approved. Our most recent partner at Sunny Point, she has seemed to be a little more reluctant because of her mission. I mean, in fairness to that position, they have a big mission. We're a small fly on the wall compared to the stuff they're dealing with. And that is a stepping stone position. They're either moving on to a star or they're retiring. So the politics is what I'm telling you. It's not just our politics, it's the Army politics. It's who's over there and what they're doing and who's willing to push. What's going on with Savannah, what's going on with the civilians, and then they change their approval process.
Every time we talk, they change what it takes. We've tried to get Rouser to help us. David's been very effective on a lot of things. He's been zero effective on that. And I appreciate everything David's done for us. We haven't been able to get any of our state senators to help us, but it's a critical health and safety welfare issue for our community and the island. Curie Beach as well, with the wastewater treatment, the stormwater lake. I mean, we're spending at a federal level millions and billions of dollars on stormwater and FEMA, and they won't let us put some damn dirt over on Matsu so we could have a better stormwater pond. They won't let us put an unmanned tank. I mean, at some point you want to just get in front of the final general and say, what are you guys thinking? We're not asking for a go-kart track and building houses on your property. We want to do, we just haven't had good partnership. We just haven't.
Well, and the reason I ask that question is, I feel like we've waited on the lake dredge. I feel like the whole town's been locked up, waiting to see what Matsu said.
Matsu told us they won't let us do anything until we complete the environmental study. They're not addressing any of our issues. I mean, they say they are, but they're not. There hasn't been any significant movement, whether it's the dredge or the well or anything, until that
What
environmental.
I don't wanna do here is wait 7 years waiting to see if we can get Matsu's agreement to do anything to find out that they won't. Right, cause now you're 7 more years
I don't
behind the curve.
disagree. I'm just,
I still think it's about building relationships, and I know we talked about having breakfasts with them and such, and that got canceled, but we need to do that. We need to build a relationship with them so we can move forward with everything. They have to know how critical it is
And we
for
need
this town.
answers quickly.
We do.
Quickly and government quickly.
so I would remind you that we just had Mike Hoffer here. What was he looking for? He was looking for an answer quickly out of his local municipality. I appreciate that, Lynn. I want answers quickly, but the government ain't giving them, and the relationships change every 24 months at Sunny Point. It's tough. I get it. Jay, I
And
don't
if you
disagree
think they're
with you. I don't know
emotional,
what the
they're not.
solution is, 'cause
Oh, no, I know.
They have no
prefer to go to
emotion when it
solutions,
comes to that stuff.
Not the complaint.
So you're not gonna
but
appeal to that.
If you guys don't understand some of that history, which is what I'm just giving you some of that background, because you're gonna be here.
Yeah, I guess my question is when's the last time council has sat down with Matsu? And I know this is a different subject, you guys, and I apologize about this.
No,
But when's the last time we actually sat down and talked to them as council?
It's been 6 or 8 months.
And staff has regular conversations, but yeah, we tried to set up the breakfast, but due to COVID, they wanted to postpone it.
But that is because of COVID. We were scheduled for a tour, we've been scheduled for a breakfast, we were scheduled for all that, but after COVID, there were, they barely let us in now.
I would, Jay, you don't need to tour the damn facility. We've all seen the facility. We know what great.
That all
places
got
they are.
canceled,
They
remember?
need to come in here and understand that we have some serious health, safety, and welfare issues that affect our community, and they hold the key.
And they do have a new commander.
Where are we, not yet, August, right?
Yeah, this month, I don't know if they've changed the guards happened, but we can try again to get the new commander over here so we can,
Have they already done that?
I have an emergency.
I know we
I
usually
haven't
get
got the
invited, but I'm
notification.
sure they're not gonna
they were
do
gonna do
that.
a Zoom change.
Where are we at with the environmental study?
We've got one round of testing. It hasn't been submitted yet, so but it looked positive. I think there was still some
We need 4 quarters.
assessments.
I mean,
We
that's
need
the first
4.
step.
This would be number 1.
So that's your answer.
We're not gonna get an answer from Matsu until we have that done.
1 year.
So we
Still a
need,
year out.
There you go.
yeah, we need 1 year, and all 4 quarters have to be clean.
And we're just now in the process of doing our first. That was a new hurdle they laid on us. I have a meeting I have to be at noon. I will ask, as long as we're on this utility information, that my non-agenda item was to ask council to get staff to put a bid out for dredging the lake. And ask the bidding, figure out a process that says, let's see what the public says they can do with that material. Let's see what the number is to ship it off the island somewhere. We don't have a place on the island, but again, everyone says, and it is the most critical thing, let's finish the damn lake. So we should put a bid together and send an RFP out that said, who's out there? What contractors are out there that can come up with a creative way and a place to get rid of that material, and what would it cost? And if it comes back at something we can't afford, then
Right.
we
I'm
know.
okay with an RFP.
We have to go forward.
All right, we'll put that out. I was gonna
So let's
clarify.
finish up with these gentlemen.
Yeah, Mayor, we've covered everything we were going to cover. Just the next steps.
Thank you for listening to our
No,
thought
All of
process.
this is relative, and we appreciate your feedback. It's important. This is a process, not an event, right? We're not in an emergency state. There's a need. and I hope that we did a good job of expressing that. We came up with a phased approach. Implementing phase one, whenever you're ready, is something that we can kind of give you more detail on. I think understanding the financial component, the financial impact of this, and is there an opportunity for funding that might help, that might be advantageous for the town, is something that Brian and our team can help with also.
Well, and I think we just heard location-wise, to start that implementation, we're looking at a year.
And I can say, if Matsu is off the table, it does shift you into a little different options, right? You could use the Cape Fear site and repurpose it. There's some complexities to that, and we covered that in the report. I would invite you to take a look. After that, you're looking at other vacant property in the town, and there's not a whole lot of it. Right.
Okay. Any more questions?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, very good.
Mayor, thank you, council. Thank you very
Very
much.
good.
Coming in? Did you tell him coming in?
I did.
Did you? Okay. Jeff said, okay. Watch out for the guy on the end. Thank you.
We did a great job. Thank you. Managers updates? Steve, are you popping out now?
In about 3 minutes.
All right.
Okay, before the manager's update, just clarify
Thank you,
that
guys.
RP to
Appreciate it.
include disposal.
Yes.
Okay, dredge and disposal of that. We'll see what we get.
Come up
Okay,
with a solution.
yep,
I like that. Yeah, I like that, Steve.
Okay.
Let them do the
We'll-
homework.
we'll do it. All right, we got several things to update you on. We're gonna switch around a little bit. I'm gonna let Ed start off with a.
Hang on one second before Steve leaves. 9 a.m. Right?
Yes, yes.
Mediation. Tomorrow. You're in it. 9 o'clock. Anyway, that's why I wanted to bring it up so he didn't forget.
Okay.
Hey, I've got one question before Steve leaves. I do want to bring up this mural thing, and I don't know if we have to vote on it, but if Steve is a voting member, it would be nice if they can maybe just hear this out.
Well, we
real quick.
typically wouldn't vote in a workshop anyway.
Okay.
But you can talk about it in non-agenda if you want.
Yeah, I'll talk about non-agenda. I'll wait till then.
Have you shown it to him?
I have not. So this is Town Hall. This is the sign. It's a lot smaller than what we talked about. It's the same size as the
Hold on,
church
just give
sign
us a
over there. But this is town property, so we can put it here without.
Okay, so you found another location?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We can, usually we would vote, any votes we would take would be done at the council. I don't
Okay,
think we
understood.
usually, is that correct, Bruce?
Yeah, well, there's certain,
So you'll have Joe, Dan, and Steve. Can I see that while he's talking?
there are certain administrative things we do vote on, like budget amendments you have coming up, but
Okay.
typically projects are something we
Let's just
have on the agenda beforehand.
size of the sign.
Okay, Bruce, go.
Okay, we have several things to go over, and Ed and I are going to switch off a little bit. I'm going to let Ed start off with the update on the Hamlet Ocean Rescue bathrooms.
Mayor, council, we did a request for qualifications a little over a year ago, and the most qualified candidate was Wimco. We've been working with them under a design build, which is what we have set up. We have one contract with Wimco, and they manage the design, all the engineering, architecture, and the build. So we've been working with them on the first phase. We slowed down a little bit so we wouldn't impact the summer and have to close that parking lot off. And now we're at a point where Wimco has bid out everything to subcontractors. We're going to actually meet with them tomorrow to review pricing, and the plan is to start construction. We're trying to, originally we were looking at Labor Day. We want to, right after Labor Day, we want to give the lifeguards a little more time in that, excuse me, in that lot, and our tourists a little more time in that lot. So
Where are the
starting,
lifeguards now?
the lifeguards are still in that lot. We have one trailer where they're occupying, and a temporary
Hamlet?
trailer, and 2 storage trailers there. So there's 3
On
trailers
On Hamlet.
on Hamlet, right?
And we don't have any price on this yet?
The cost is, our initial estimates we got was around $600,000 for the total project, and that's what we're anticipating it being at, but we won't have those numbers
About
until
that.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Right.
And so are we
Right.
taking a loan out for that, or are we going to dip into our RT funds for that? since we didn't spend the money this summer doing all this other stuff.
We talked about using ROT funds and putting a request in for ROT if we can cover that. And historically, we have been able to use room occupancy tax for things like bathrooms and lifeguards.
I think that would be a
Facilities.
pretty easy push through ROT, and there's several $100,000 we didn't spend that I believe will be there.
And Ed, if I'm not mistaken, we currently have a loan for this project. They could pay the debt service on it for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Whatever you financially think. If you got the money cheap, I mean, maybe you want to finance it, I don't know, but I mean, whatever you think.
It could help us if someone.
Sorry, I didn't mean
made
to
that work.
interrupt you.
Okay, and
All right.
You-
Hurricane ICA, I still can't say it, ECAS. The vegetative debris pickup ends tomorrow, so just wanted to make that announcement. We put that out there on social media, but it should be done. I'm sure there'll be some additional things that we end up having to do. There is a budget amendment before you that we need approved that adds an additional $445,000 to the emergency budget that you approved for $25,000 pre-storm. Most of that money goes toward the vegetative debris pickup. That is a lot, but that includes the monitoring, and this is a FEMA-related expense. We did meet with a Zoom meeting with our county partners and the other municipalities, given their total amount of expected cost, so we can get the governor to declare and to request this funding to reimburse us. So we would need a motion on that.
I'm sorry, where's the motion?
There's a budget amendment in front of you,
You want
an
to-
ordinance,
go ahead.
budget
I
ordinance.
can do it. I think, so motion to approve ordinance number 20-1144, an ordinance to amend the general fund budget, creating a budget appropriation for hurricane, however you say ISAIAS.
That's why I passed it to you. Motion on the table, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, the next thing is, as we mentioned last month, we had meetings with DOT, and they have told us they are willing to approve speed limits if we agree to enforce the speed limit on Dow and Ocean Boulevard. And before you is what it is existing, and it's 45, and then about Tarboro, it changes to 55. We proposed option one is changing Dow all the way to 45 and Ocean to 25. And the next option was Dow all 45 and Ocean 35. And we just want to present that. This is not approving it today. We just want to show you these options. And if, with council's direction, we can prepare a resolution for the next meeting, then that we will submit to DOT for their consideration.
Give me the two options again, Bruce. Go.
Mainly, it comes down to changing Ocean to 25 or 35. Right now, it's a mix of 35 and
And then
45.
45 all the way to Ocean on
Yeah.
Dow.
Correct.
And I did see an email, because I get Creevich's emails, that they are discussing that, I think at their next meeting, the Dow Road speed reduction.
Curry Beach, yes.
I just saw that in their town
Yeah,
email.
we did notify them about it, and so we will.
So my only concern is if you take a look at the studies that have been done, when it's 55, the average speed, basically they're going 65 miles an hour. At 45, they're basically going 55 miles an hour. So there's one of two things that needs to happen. The enforcement piece has to take place if we change this limits. What I would like to see, I'm fine with 45 all the way down to Ocean. I would like to see it drop to 40 miles an hour. I know we can't do 35 because of the golf cart situation. I understand that piece. But I think 40 miles an hour at Tarboro or even the street before that walkway, because a lot of these studies were done before that walkway it was so heavily trafficked. So personally, I would like to see 40 from,
You don't think that's confusing, 40, 45?
no. Because right now it's 45 to 55. If they can understand that, they can
And then
understand
you're talking
45
about
to
40, 45, 55.
That's correct.
From 40 from
I mean, I don't know, I'm just throwing it.
from Tarboro, you say
From
45?
Tarboro or even,
See what the chief says. Throw it out.
We'll
yeah,
pass that.
I mean, it has to be slow enough for them to stop at that crosswalk. I mean, next meeting, I'll be glad to bring in video.
Right, yeah.
It's-
Oh, we know it's a problem.
I just want to understand what, so you're saying, you're proposing, go 40 from Lake Park to the current Tarboro position where the speed change is now, and then pick up to 45 to Ocean, and then, of course, it goes to 55 to that. Is that your proposal?
That's correct. Or even, even before Tarboro.
And so then another question to Jay's point, is DOT going to be more probable to approve it if it's one change versus two changes?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There may be a safety issue.
Yeah, they may go,
Yeah,
well,
well-
you know, you don't have enough, they say all kinds of stuff. You might not
Understand.
have the distance,
Just- yeah.
you know. I don't know.
And-
I could support, I mean, certainly I could support what you're trying to do. If the
I
DOT
understand.
and staff says
I
that
just wanted to
extra
go
change
through.
would be there.
Yeah, my experience with DOT, they may have some issues with that, especially coming back the other way where you go down from 45 to 40, considering a speed trap. But,
Right.
but it does it now, but, so,
Right.
We'll
so,
let you run that.
And then, Bruce, the only comment I have over reading through these traffic studies is to do this, if DOT approves it, one of the conditions is that we enforce it.
Right.
And I think in all of us reading through all the material are beginning to question enforcement on Dow.
Right.
They don't have any numbers, obviously, it's a
Right.
feel thing, but it seems to be that we do not have sufficient speed enforcement on there. And if you just look at the study that was done, as best I can understand it, I was stunned by some of these numbers. I mean, according to the study, on the section by the state park, in a 24-hour period, we had 102 vehicles going over 110 miles an hour. That's what the study said.
I don't doubt it.
And your first thing is that can't be true. But then when you look at the other speed monitors positions, they support that. And I don't believe two monitors got it wrong twice, right?
Right.
I mean, so I don't know what the answer is. I'm not in law enforcement. I don't know how difficult that is to staff, but I think we need to slow speed limit's one way, but the other way is we have got to slow people down
Well,
on
Yeah.
that section. That's my opinion.
Just a comment, and I think you're right. For me, as just a Joe Blow driver, one of the most effective things has been that speed monitor on St. Joseph Street, and I don't know where the other one is now. Is it still on Cape Fear?
Cape Fear.
I mean, I don't know, maybe we need to look at it, asking also to put one of those up
yeah.
on, I mean, my car pops up and tells me what the speed limit is, but it takes a couple of seconds for that to change over. It'll tell you, I don't know what that's called, but you know what I'm talking about. It tells you what the speed limit is and what you're going. Even that takes a minute to pop up. So how quickly is a person going to see a sign and know what the speed limit is?
They are extremely effective, though.
But that little sign, I think, would be huge. Maybe
Yeah.
if we could throw that in there as a permission on both streets, Ocean and Dow, to put one of those speed, what do you call them? I don't know what they're called, speed
Yeah, it's the radar.
measurer,
conduct, yeah,
whatever
yeah.
thing is.
Yeah, we can do
But,
it.
I mean, I think that would be very effective on both streets.
Yeah, we can look, because even if we change Dow being such a wide road, psychologically, you're going to think it's a faster speed
That's
limit.
right, it's
So you
psychological.
need something that reminds
Exactly
them.
right.
Yeah.
Mhm. So if we could get those, maybe ask for that permission as well.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah, I'm sure
My
they'll be
thoughts.
fine with that, so, yeah.
Yeah,
that might help. a
Good
lot.
point.
I just don't want to do just the speed. I think if we just change a bunch of speed limit signs, that's only, that
Right.
won't
not
happen.
enough.
We see from these numbers that people don't follow the signs that are there. So the piece from that is, the next piece of that is enforcement, right? I mean, until you start writing some tickets and
Mhm.
people start to slow down, the word will spread real fast. You know, a $250 ticket and your insurance going up suddenly changes opinions.
And I do think when you make that presentation to DOT, the fact that there is a crosswalk on Ocean and Dow is a huge reason to want to do that. But maybe even so many feet before that crosswalk, put that speed limit sign, that speed measuring sign.
Right. Yep, yep.
That's just my.
We'll
And
pass
one
those
other
on to
thing,
them.
Bruce, and it's not for this is a separate discussion, but as you're relatively new here, I don't know what the process is, and I know we tried it before. I think we did. We need to try again to get a turn lane at the state park. I mean, I know that's beyond what we're talking about here today, and I don't remember all the ins and outs and how hard that was, but that is getting, in my opinion, extremely tough because more and more, especially with the increases in boating because of COVID, there's someone turning left there every time. And so anyway, just my 2 cents. Future, I'm not saying bundle it with this request. I'm just
Right.
saying need to keep that on the radar.
Sure. All right, next thing, a quick update on the town marina. As you know, we just received a grant from Golden Leaf. Staff has met with them through Zoom got the breakdown of what we need to do. We're working on that. We have to have a signed contract by September 21st. Staff met yesterday to talk about some timelines, and as you can see, we think we will have a final design with improvements in February 2021. We plan to get some public input on that, including the charter captains and general public, just to see what we're looking at. This is more infrastructure and bulkheads and things like that, but there'll be some the layout considerations that we will run through the public. Then we hope to have construction drawings and bidding by May 2021, and then hopefully get a kickoff in July of next year. And then we'll know more about how long it'll take to do all the construction, because there's different phases, and we got to be, think about the seasons too, not to interfere with summer. So,
But I think Ed said the last time, at least the early estimates are, it's not gonna happen in one season.
right. This would be a
Right.
big.
No
it's a
way
big
you're gonna
project.
cram it in between September and March, right? I
Right.
mean,
Right.
We got to time where the charters are, make sure we don't
Well,
interfere
at least
that.
we got the
canal.
money.
Right.
yep, that's the hardest problem.
That's the best news.
Most of it. We still need to work that out, but. Okay. I think- Next, we've had this before, we're doing this, some demolition and condemnation process on some other properties. Our shell building got further damaged through the hurricane. So staff has looked at this, and with council's consent, we were going to start moving forward on with the removal of that building, because it is in pretty bad shape now, even more so than it was before. So no formal action, just getting,
And I'm assuming it's not financially feasible to recover. In other words, it's beyond done. Is that
Oh,
what
it
you're-
is way beyond done.
right,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I think then if we're requiring other businesses and property owners in that area to come, we need to
Yeah.
drink our own,
Just do it cheap.
Yeah, exactly. We will.
give Ed a hammer and.
It
no,
is.
And probably put
Don't come in here with
Yeah.
$150,000
It
to tear that building down.
Decrepit, yeah.
Yeah, put a chain on it and get in the car and take
Do
off.
it cheap, do it cheap.
All right, and next is, as you know, we just had the Lake Park enhancement proposal public meeting and the land use plan public meeting. I think Ed's got some slides and follow up on that, on some of the comments we received, so I'll let Ed take that.
the overview of the comments we had for the land use plan, and thank you for all going to that. The first one at top, relocate the red dash line for the pedestrian bike path off 107 South Lake Park Boulevard. That was a comment received that was from the property owner, came in and talked and was not interested in giving an easement to the town. That was an area where we had closed the road when the Marriott went in. We were hoping to reestablish at least a pedestrian pathway through there. So there was some concerns with that. This was identified in the land use plan because it was something we're looking at, but that lot in Carolina Sands actually went under contract and somebody is building a house on it. So I was removing that as a potential future interconnectivity point for Wilmington Beach. And then the last one, there was some homeowners that wanted to make sure we didn't make any changes down here. Traditionally, this in our zoning is called our T1 zone. They just want to make sure we maintained it T1, and it is in the land classification map. So we're happy with that. Carolina Beach Lake was simultaneously going on. One of the big questions is where is this vegetation going to be installed? And the southern shore is the test area. Down there on the southeastern side is where we would start. There wouldn't be impacts on lake dredge. This wouldn't impact if we did start the lake dredge process again. Doing this phase one would not impact how a contractor would come in there. How do plants prevent erosion? The type of native plants that would be reintroduced here would have the larger root system and would help maintain that soil area. And I should have said this up front. These are the questions and answers that we went through at the meeting. So you have a little handout in front of you with these as well. Well, plants died during flood. We did have the Wildlife Federation that came and addressed that. These plants are native and to areas where there's typical flooding. So if there's a flood event, they are able to withstand that to a certain extent. So how will water quality be impacted? They also can help absorb a lot of nutrients that are coming into the system, all the runoff. So they can help, just like any wetland area can help improve water quality. Maintenance and who will water the plants, this will be a cost increase, an additional burden for the town. So this is something that we will go back and work with our landscaper on and come up with a cost. There will be some additional cost and maintenance requirements for maintaining this, and we don't have that yet.
So I do have a question. Since these plants are native, why do they have to be watered on a regular basis from an outside source?
To get them established, reestablished there, it's going to take some, the first year is going to be crucial to get them established and that root bed foundation going through deep enough. It'll take a while before they're there and we can.
Well, since I know we're going to get asked this question, you need to let us know how much it's costing us.
But,
We need to be able to respond with that answer.
but that was a key part of their presentation that they gave before council, was that this was all paid for and not going to cost the town anything. And now suddenly And suddenly I'm hearing it is going to cost the town something. So is it costing the town something or not is where my question went. Because that was one of the key complaints I heard from citizens. I think you guys were CC'd on some of their
And just a
emails.
comment, so you can think about this when you answer. I'm okay with what we talked about to run irrigation out there, because that's fairly inexpensive to do that. I mean, if we can just turn it on and put it on a timer, but now you're talking about having the landscape company come out, so that is more money, because they're not cheap.
I think if you look at number 8 on the screen, that initial, there will be no cost to the town. But if you look at number 6, there will be additional cost to the town. So it depends on what you're looking at. I mean, yes, they are providing the plants, the educational siding. They have the expertise. They can come in and they will help with the installation and probably some of the long-term maintenance, because they are an organized group or 4 groups. Then that will help, but there will be additional costs to the town, and we don't have those numbers yet, but Brian and I were looking at it this morning. We'll bring those back to you.
Yeah, we'll have to know that, and I know, running those irrigation, PVC, that stuff's cheap, and put it on a timer, but somebody's got to probably prune it, I'm guessing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'll let you figure that out. Go ahead, help yourself, because I don't want to get beat up on it either, you know.
Roughing it right offhand, I think we're probably talking about $4,000 to $5,000 for the irrigation. Because we're going to need to provide water source.
$45,000.
You got to have a water tap.
4 to 5.
4 to 5.
4 to 5. 445.
4
Yeah,
to
about
5.
fell out of it.
Okay,
Just being
that I can
realistic.
stomach.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't break it down to a linear footage, kind of even know what you're doing. But in the conversations I've had with a landscaper, you're talking about $4,000 to $5,000 plus the cost of the water tap to provide the service if we don't have it there. And I don't know if we have it there.
You mean a water source?
Yes, ma'am.
So has anybody approached these folks about them taking care of the bill?
No. I don't know.
No, we haven't. We'll have further meetings with them
Yeah.
I mean,
based on all this input we've got. So
it sounds like they might have the resources to do this.
Sure.
So one of the things I'd like to throw in here is, so when you cross that line for money, now you require council approval. But my opinion, I was kind of surprised this became before council, because this is real, landscaping is something we don't usually get involved in. You guys manage that through your departments. So prior to what I just heard, my proposal was basically my comment to you, Bruce, is you own these departments, you own landscaping, you own the budget, you know what your budgets are. This is really, I really don't think council has, we all have opinions, obviously, but I don't think you require anything from us. There's no cost. But I would say that you have a whole set of plans in place. You have your Parks and Rec master plan. You have your Lake Park master plan that we just approved, this council just approved. You have the dredge thing going on. So I'm more than willing to hand that to you. I just ask you to balance those things and then come back to us if it costs money, because I think that is going to be contentious.
Yeah, just
Not
figure out.
necessarily between us, but
Yeah.
with the community.
Yeah, I mean, $4,000 or $5,000 is not that big of a deal, but if it's 10, we need to start thinking.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I say. Bruce can use his judgment. If it's something that is just something you can pay for out of an existing landscape budget that you had or something like that.
Yeah, some money you had left over from
if it
something
costs
else
more, we gotta
somewhere.
come to you for an adjustment anyway.
Right, but if it has to come to us, it's probably going to get contentious, I think, over the money.
Tag, you're it, Bruce.
You're
What
welcome.
else you got?
The couple more points on the Q&A for the lake.
Lynn doesn't like talking about that. For being funny, go ahead.
No,
The-
go ahead.
The partners that somebody asked who is partnering on this: a wildlife cooperative extension, plastic ocean project, and of course the town as well. What are the benefits was one of the things that we talked about at the meeting that some people wanted to know. It's I think your sheet said aesthetically pleasing. That's very subjective. So I put that it's a natural look. So it's more natural. What you would see in the wild if we weren't maintaining the grass. Stabilization of the banks, that was actually fairly contentious, but that is a good benefit. Some of the folks at the meeting didn't think there was a problem with stabilization, but there really is. We have had lots of issues with the banks on the east side. I think Polly was there. He was talking about how we used to have ability to have so many tents on the east side for the farmers market, and now there's very little room because of all the erosion on that bank, and you can see it on the south side as well. Shade, water quality, overall enhancement, property value, tourism are some of the other responses. We will be working with the folks. There was concerns about liability for volunteers and who's responsible for what. So we'll need to define all that as we have done working with other groups in the community in a memorandum of understanding, MOU. Is erosion really happening? It was just covered that, but yes, there is some erosion issues out there. A lot of concern about
Do you have
mulch.
any documentation of that? Only because I know someone's going to ask. I know exactly who's going to ask me about it.
We had that question asked, and it was there was one citizen out there that says, I've looked at Google Earth all the way back to however far it goes back, and he said there's no erosion. And that's when Paulie spoke up and he says it used to be 20 feet here, now it's 10. So he's like, it's sloughing off. And we've actually, I mean, you can see it. You can see it on the aerials where.
I'm not challenging it. I'm just saying if you got some data, send it to us because we'll get asked.
Sure.
Just ask anybody from the farmer's market.
The farm, right. So we know it's happening. And then one thing I think staff had concern about with looking at, and you as well on council, is, hey, this looks like they have mulch out there. A lot of citizens were concerned about that, or even pine straw out there. So that was addressed by Wildlife, the representative of North Carolina Wildlife and Cooperative Extension. There will be some initial use of pine straw just to establish those vegetative plants, but once they get established, then they won't need continued mulching or pine straw. Local schools also, there's a chance for them to be involved, as well as scouting troops, those types of things. They could do field trips, and one of the things they're funding through the partnership is interpretive signs that they could, for education of our community. That's it for me.
Thank you. All right. And the only other thing I was going to update you real quick on is the efficiency study that's been ongoing. They've been on site last week, this week, and they'll be here a little bit next week. Lots of good questions, lots of good discussions, focus groups, and I think we're shooting for maybe the October meeting to have a presentation, but have a report and study sometime by October, and hopefully have something presented to you in the meeting in October.
So Bruce, just a thought on the efficiency study. I've had a lot of citizens say they would like some way to give feedback. I mean, so I know, I'm not real good at this. I know these guys probably are, but I mean, I know there's all these surveys that you can automatically send out, like if somebody, you know, how was your experience at the water department today? Or how was your experience with town hall today? Or what feedback would you know how you get that all the time from, and I think we should do something like that. And I know it's easy to do, but I don't know how to do it, so I'm just throwing that at you.
Okay, well, we'll work
Business
with
and Economic Development did that
Right,
recently.
that's
So
exactly right.
someone on that committee, Maureen or Paul Levy or one of those guys that was involved in that. Can,
Yeah, I'm sure
if
we
you
can-
want to use that method, they can show you how to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure
And
we
I
can-
think they probably, I mean, I don't know how towns are doing it, but I bet you they do, the efficiency people. Because I had a couple of people say to me, how do we give feedback
Okay.
on our experience with town? And we should be taking that feedback.
Right. I'll get with Evergreen, the consultant, and
Yeah,
I'm sure we
if
can
you'll
put some
ask
kind
that
of link on the
question.
website that they can do it.
Okay, so, non-agenda items.
I'll start. I do want to touch on this mural piece one more time. They're talking about putting the mural right outside the building here. It's going to be a lot smaller here.
It's behind the cash points machine.
Yes, exactly. It's basically going to be the same size as the church sign. And you have to understand, that's photoshopped in there. It's not going to look exactly like that, but that's going to give you an idea of the dimensions of the sign. Now, the mural project, I do want to make one statement. The mural project is different than the beautification committee. There's been some confusion on that, and I just want to clear that up, but.
Yeah, it's not a town committee.
It is not a town committee. Everything is 100%, it's fully funded.
Where'd they get that money?
It's very well organized. They have tremendous artists. It's going to be, I highly recommend it. It's going to be great for the town.
Just
And
keep
we'll
one
bring-
thing in mind with that placement, is at some point, we still want to put our electronic sign out that we budgeted for somewhere, the digital sign, so just make sure that we can still see our digital, wherever we talked about putting that.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about it next meeting. We'll bring it to
Yeah,
the vote.
I walked to that, I just was curious, so I walked out there and where they're proposing that.
Yeah.
It's actually a much better place
I
than
agree.
where they were talking about before, because
Yeah.
as the traffic's there's a slight curve in Lake Park, so they literally, the traffic's coming straight at that mural. I want to call it a sign because effectively it is a sign, but it's,
Yeah.
I just don't want people to think all the murals are going to be signs at some point, because that's not what the goal is.
It's a mural. It's a
So
mural.
that brings me to, if you, go ahead.
I just had one other comment. I think it's a great location because it ties in, it's welcome to Carolina Beach, and we have Town Hall right here, so I think it's extremely welcoming.
Right. I think it's a better location too.
Go ahead. Oh,
Well, since you're talking about murals, let me just stay on murals real quick.
yes.
I was in Oak Island a couple of weeks ago, and all their public bathrooms were painted with murals. Did you notice that? Why not take that one down on the boardwalk, that ugly white one, and paint something really pretty on that?
I'm sure,
You know,
take
but
that
when you go paint
recommendation
some
and
mermaids on it,
take it
or,
to home. Oh, absolutely.
you know,
Maureen, are you
something
listening?
pretty, you know?
That's perfect.
But when I
mean,
thought, wow, that's a pretty cool idea, and I took a
That's
couple
perfect.
pictures of it.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you've seen them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have an ugly white cinder block building down there that you guys could, as far as I'm concerned, have your way with. And,
Fantastic.
you know, I think that'd be a great project for you.
Question on committees. We made a decision on committees. Are we going to start them back up? Or are we still on hold to the governor's order? Or what does that look like?
Wait, what's that date?
Whatever you guys decide. I know Business and Economic Development, they met by a Google meeting. I think that was pretty successful. So if other committees want to try to do that. We also need to decide if we want to bring to the September meeting a vote to appoint the committee members that expired June 30th.
So we're gonna do that at our next meeting.
Are you guys good with that, September?
Yes.
So that'll
I
be
think we
planning,
need to move
zoning, all
forward.
of them.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
When is the governor's next date? Is it September 17th or?
The 11th, I think, was the
11th.
next.
Right.
Um,
And the numbers seem to be trending a little bit better, so maybe we'll have a,
But I will tell you, in New Hanover County, we're still doing all our meetings via Zoom. They've done a couple in person, but not many.
Well, and I think we need to move forward. I think the committees that really have the passion and to meet, they can meet virtually, even if we don't hit that date, because that worked very, very well. My understanding for business, it's the only one I've ever
like the
missed,
whole
but I
Zoom
missed
thing,
that one.
you know?
The other thing is, my mind is transitioning to this is kind of the new normal.
That's right.
And we can't just, I mean, what if the governor doesn't allow this for 10, 12 more months? You know, we can't
Right.
go forever. So we got to find the new normal. So I would say we need to move forward. And you also have some of these committees, like if you look at police advisory, it's a shell of itself because of the turnover of people, and we need to get some people involved if we want to keep that committee moving.
And I think sometimes certain committees will meet when there's really nothing to talk about. There's no reason to do that if you could do it on Zoom, you know, and everybody could be at home still having their dinner or whatever, you know, so just think about that. But I'm fine for them to start meeting again, but I don't know that it has to be in person.
I do have one project for the operations committee, that, I know at one time they went out to every intersection to make sure that you could see both ways, left and right. I know we have some streets right now in dire need to be trimmed back, one being 6 in Atlanta. We need to take a look at that. Actually, I think Joe Dan lives right there. He can go out there with some shears and probably do that himself. But yeah, that intersection is in need. Also, if you come all the way down Charlotte on Dow Road, it's tough to look to the left-hand side. That's just 2 examples, but I know there's a bunch more out there. It's an easy fix, too. That's all I have.
So Jay, if you wouldn't mind getting, and of course, whatever they want to do on it, we would need to run through council, but I think that's a great project for the mural committee. I was picturing, I don't know, maybe Zeus with his, you know, little thingy and a mermaid on the lady's side and then some pretty little beachy thingies, you know. That's what my mind
So
had.
they actually have a schedule right now. The first mural will be the postcard. The second one is going on the side of Veggie Wagon. And I know the third one is going on the side of Crush and Grind.
So you're backed up, is what you're saying.
They are backed up a little bit.
I would like to see this done before next spring on something. That bathroom looks terrible.
Well, it could also go to the beautification committee.
Right, maybe, yeah.
But it doesn't have to be done by the mural.
That's
people.
right.
What she's talking about doesn't have to be
Yeah.
done by
I
the.
mean, I think it's such a small square footage and a simple, you know, it'd be nice. It just is one ugly little building.
It's good input.
And if you could get citizen buy-in, I mean, no matter how you do it, if we could get the community to come out, somebody make a plan, the community come out and do some of that painting and stuff. I'm not talking about the murals, I'm talking about bathrooms and things like that.
And we did that with the board.
Like we did with, like the Boardwalk Makeover did. It
Right.
creates a lot of civic pride in it for a lot of
Agreed,
people.
agreed.
I think that'd be awesome. I think people show up. We know this community shows up when you.
Absolutely.
I bet you could do that little bathroom in 3 days. It's so tiny, you know. So anyway, which made me think of something else. Did we ever budget money for the bathroom that was supposed to be built in front of Fork and Cork? There was no money budgeted for that? Okay, I was just going to ask if we still had the money. So it wasn't in the budget, and that's kind of on hold right now.
Yes, that's
Okay.
all.
And I don't know, Brian, if somebody's already asked you this question, but I've been asked 3 times. Do we have any plans to widen Goldsboro? Or is that just the neighbors talking? You heard it too? A realtor called me and said, I'm trying to sell a property over there, and the neighbors told me that you were widening that street. And I said, I don't know anything about it. She did. I told her to send you, we're not widening Goldsboro. Okay. I don't know where that came from. The neighbors thought we were widening the street. So, okay, thanks. That's all I got.
I have one that really wasn't on my list, but since you brought up the Hamlet construction, I think you and I talked about it a while back, Bruce, but one of the things we learned when we shut down that parking lot for COVID is we learned a lot of residents buy annual passes and park in that parking lot because they became a point of contention. Suddenly their parking was gone away. I don't know how to solve it, not trying to solve it here, just want to, when we come back next year to relook at parking, we should figure that out, because I don't think the intent of our town parking passes was for say a condo with insufficient parking to subsidize their parking with our parking lot,
That's interesting.
right?
Yeah.
And we would have never known that if we hadn't shut the
Right.
parking lot down, or I certainly wouldn't have known. Don't need to solve it now, but when we come back around to parking regulations and rules for 2021, we need to look at that.
So just a question on the back of that comment. I was asked the other day from another municipality, how's our parking revenue? How are we doing for parking?
Debbie's
Do we
got a
know?
thing. I think we're doing pretty well this summer. I think it's been busy summer. We've added the additional lots. So I think I don't remember the numbers, but I think it's tracking at or above.
Are we where we were last year?
I think the June and July we are. I think we're right there. I think, of course, we heard in April we didn't have any, but I think May really shot up too.
Encouraging.
Okay. All right. That's all I got. Anybody else? So tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, we're in the mediation again tomorrow.
That's you and Steve?
Yeah, with, I don't know if I should be talking about it, but, sorry, my attorney's, not present, so,
So say nothing.
yeah. So anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So, well, I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.